Hello and welcome. My name is Nate from Video Games Recon, and if you're a subscriber, no, I'm not dead. I've just been taking a little sabbatical over the past couple of months as I've been a little burnt out with YouTube and needed some time to recharge the old batteries. And we'll have more videos coming in the future on a less regular basis than before, but hopefully more interesting and of a greater quality. Also, there should be no ads on this video, as in an unrelated note, my MCN dropped most of its creators. Although, that said, this video could quite easily get claimed by someone. In the future, I'll probably find another or flirt with Patreon or something. Anywho, we're starting to get into the weeds here. This all can be discussed in a separate video. In this video, we're going to go over my top 20 announcements from E3 entirely based off my personal preferences, yours may vary, of games that I'm most hyped for over the next year or two. So, without any further ado, let's do it to it. (20) PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Even though this kind of battle royale game isn't really my cup of tea, I appreciate that the hype for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is real, and getting this game to Xbox first is a real coup de grace for Microsoft, as even though it's still in early access, it is dominating the charts over on Steam, and will be a welcome addition to consoles as that ecosystem is relatively starved for games of this ilk. (19) Cuphead. This game has shown its hand way too many times over the past few E3s, and thus much of the hype for it has subsided. It's time to shit or get off the pot, people. Luckily, there is a final release date for September 2017. I just hope they stick to this date while there is still some buzz around the game. (18) A new mainline Pokemon RPG for Switch. This one is tenuous at best, as it was literally just a passing comment in a Nintendo Showcase event, and didn't even have a title or any concept or even key art, but nonetheless an official announcement that a Switch version of a Pokemon RPG is on the way is a pretty exciting prospect indeed. (17) Metroid Prime 4. Following on from the last pick with not a whole lot to go on, no gameplay, trailer, or perhaps even a full title, but nonetheless, even for someone who's not really that much of a Metroid Prime fan, an official announcement of a new game that has long been rumoured about and from a franchise that is held in high regard gives me reason enough to get a bit hyped, even if it's for a game early in development and quite a ways off. Plus, at least this one has key art. (16) A Way Out. This is pretty much the only thing in the whole EA conference that piqued my interest, which, as a side note, I felt was dull as dishwater and easily the worst of the bunch. Sure, Battlefront is cool and all, but not really up my alley, at least not enough with all the other similar games coming out around the same time. That said, the single player stuff does look pretty interesting. Anywho, getting a little off track here. A Way Out is a huge step up from Hazelight's last game, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. From a very indie game to something that looks like it's knocking on AAA's door, with a great narrative that has a very Shawshank Redemption feel to it. The only negative I have for this game could well be its best feature in terms of standing out from its competition, and that is that this game has to be played co-op, either IRL or online with a friend or randoms, and there is no single player mode with AI, for example. This could be a great thing, making the game different every time you play it, or it could be absolute dog shite, taking away from the experience that you personally want to have. I guess we'll have to wait till early 2018 to find out which is the case. (15) Middle-earth: Shadow of War. This game looks pretty dope. Initially I wasn't all that interested, but the more I see about this game the better it looks, and the more hyped I get. And that's from someone who hasn't even played the original yet. And boy, it sure does look like you get a lot of bang for your buck in this game, with the whole Nemesis malarkey padding out an already large open world game. "14. Kingdom Hearts 3. Technically, this game wasn't even at E3 as far as I'm aware, but we did get a new trailer drop within the E3 window, so I decided to include it. You know, because it's Kingdom Hearts 3. But also because of that, we probably won't see it on shelves till at least 2019, or perhaps ever with the way Square has been handling their IP recently. Hence why it only reaches my number 14 spot. "13. Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. I've not played the original yet, but heard nothing but good things. So much so that I've snapped it up in a sale and intend to give it a blast in the coming days. Anywho, the gunplay in this game looks just as dope as it did in the last one, but in particular I really like how they're expanding upon the story and world building in this game, and letting it take centre stage with its whole man in the high castle vibe. Except, you know, with giant robot dogs and whatnot. "12. The Evil Within 2. Never really got into the first game. Although the story was super interesting, the gameplay felt a little discombobulated. In the first few hours, it feels like the game can't make up its mind what it wants to be in terms of mechanics. That said, this game, and in particular the story, looks really engrossing, and as it seems intrinsically tied to the first, it makes me feel like I didn't give the original a fair chance. Such is the power of this trailer. "11. Metro Exodus. Wow, this game looks spectacular. I know that it's probably running on the Xbox One X and thus looks buttery smooth, and better than it most likely will look on the platform I play it on, but nonetheless I very much enjoyed my time in Metro Last Light, and if there was one complaint I'd give it, is that it could do with some more open areas, that I could take my time in and explore. And thanks to the guys over at 4A Games, this has been addressed in the upcoming game Metro Exodus, now featuring not an open world as such, which might be a bridge too far for hardcore Metro fans, but instead sandbox areas, which I think is the perfect compromise for a game like this. "10. Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is another game that looks amazing. This one not so much due to the graphics, but more so due to the art style, as from this trailer it practically looks like you're playing an episode of Dragon Ball Z, which would be an unbelievable thought even just 10 years ago. And to add to my excitement, this game appears to be much more your typical fighting game on a 2D plane, and with limited verticality. As although I appreciated the Dragon Ball Xenoverse and more recent games, I could never get into it with the somewhat free roam fighting aspect to the game, as it never felt quite right to me personally. But with Dragon Ball FighterZ, or Dragon Ball Fighters, however it's pronounced, going back to its roots, this is definitely a game I can get on board with. "9. Detroit Become Human. This game looks great every time we see it, and in particular the story, with a very intriguing narrative in which we might be the bad guys, and in a sense encouraging a form of slavery, and having to deal with the fallout of a rebellion, but this time from the other side. Still though, I would like to see more gameplay and fewer trailers at this point, and the lack of a release date or even window worries me somewhat, as this game might not even be a 2018 game, as if it was, you'd think it would be a pretty safe bet to at least announce the year of its release. "8. Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds. Okay, I know I'm cheating here as this isn't technically a game, but anything that gives me more Horizon to play with more story content and a new area to explore is a good thing in my book and something I'm particularly hyped for. I just hope that I'm not too OP when we actually get to the Frozen Wilds, as is often the case with games of this ilk. I'm looking at you, Fallout. As I was pretty beast by the end of Horizon and hope that the area scales accordingly. Seven, Super Mario Odyssey. What to say? It's a new 3D open sandbox Mario game. It's kinda hard to fuck this one up too much. The worlds look awesome with their own original aesthetic and vibe, even the real world New York one, which looks a bit weird. And I really like the new abilities of being able to take over enemies and other NPCs with your magic hat. This looks like a super interesting game mechanic to me. I don't know if and when I'll get a Switch, but when I do, this will be a game I'll be looking forward to play. 6. Shadow of the Colossus. Widely regarded as the best Team Ico game and a fan favourite that said fans of the series have been crying out for a sequel or remaster of for years now, and finally that day has come. And although not a fan of the original and we don't know exactly how true a remaster this will be, I'm stoked to play this game as I never actually got to play it back in the day and have heard nothing but good things, and that if I could get over the clunky controls would totally be my sort of game. And with never wanting to go back, find a copy and dust off my PS2 to play a game that might not live up to expectations due to being a sign of the times, I'm stoked that now I'll get to enjoy this game with a modern control scheme, UI and graphics. 5. God of War. Never been a God of War fan, never cared about the series, and always felt like it was a poor man's Devil May Cry with a protagonist that has about as much charisma as an angry ballbag. I am, however, pleasantly surprised by the new tone of the God of War reboot, as the characters and even the combat to an extent feels more grounded and has extra dimensions, particularly Kratos, who doesn't seem like such an insufferable prick anymore. I'm also very stoked to learn more about the NPCs and open sandbox areas, and how that will affect the gameplay. All in all, I'm hyped for a game that I normally shouldn't be, and won't have to wait too long to get my hands on it either. "4. The Last Night." Normally, I don't care much for indie games with a pixel art aesthetic. More often than not, I find them underwhelming. But boy oh boy does this game look expertly made, a real par excellence in terms of art style at the very least, with that whole dope looking Blade Runner-esque vibe. In terms of gameplay, we don't know a whole lot more than it's supposed to be a platformer with puzzle elements. The whole thing reminds me of a classic game, Another World, which as far as I'm concerned is a good thing. With all that said, if they can stick the landing that the art style has afforded them, then this looks like the indie game for all indie devs to beat at the moment. 3. Days Gone. I know. Do we really need yet another zombie game? And the answer to that is no. No, we don't. But with that being said, I still can't quell my hype for this game. Every time I see a new trailer, I get sucked back in, as this game looks like if Horizon Zero Dawn and The Last of Us had a baby, with a little bit of Sons of Anarchy thrown in for good measure. And that, in my book, sounds like something worth purchasing a ticket to board the hype train for. I particularly like how that the world and your missions change dependent on the weather. For example, the gameplay that we saw at E3 plays entirely differently dependent on the procedural weather, in terms of enemy placements and events. The only major downer on this though is the lack of a release date. If this doesn't come out in 2018 at the latest, am I still going to be anywhere near as interested as I am now? I doubt it. 2. SpiderMan. This game looks more like a frickin' CG movie rather than a game, and although it looks like there's way too many QuickTime events as is, it really looks impressive. In particular, the seamless way in which you're going from street views to top of buildings to aerial acrobatics to zipping through cafes and whatnot is an impressive feat. And more often than not, when you see this sort of thing at events like E3, you struggle to believe that this isn't all choreographed just for the conference. But with this game being developed by such tried and tested pedigree as Insomniac, I can actually believe that this level of fidelity is achievable. It really does feel like Insomniac could have the same sort of renaissance with this franchise as Rocksteady did with the Arkham series. Let's just hope they can stick to a 2018 release window. First, before we get into my number 1 pick, let's give a shout out to some honourable mentions in no particular order. Vampire, Ni no Kuni 2, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Sonic Mania, Doom VR, Fallout VR and Skyrim for PSVR and Switch. You know, cause Skyrim, the game that just won't die. And last but by no means least, Red Dead Redemption 2. Purely because it didn't feature at E3, as FYI if it did, I'd probably give it my number 2 spot. And my number 1 most hype announcement and game that will hopefully be out by 2018 is Anthem. This game totally blindsided me and came out of left field. And although people knew there was a BioWare game floating about, no one saw this coming. And even if I did, I still wouldn't expect to be so enamoured with it. Sure, we don't really know a whole lot about it at this point, and there's plenty of time for them to fuck this up, with bad animations, facial expressions and so on, but I'm cautiously optimistic for this game. The hub area gives off a very Star Wars feel, and the open world aspect that looks massive, seamless and with a great deal of verticality, from high up in the trees and mountains to low down in the depths of a deep lake, looks truly impressive with a very Avatar aesthetic. And the gameplay appears to resemble Destiny, which is also no bad thing. And all wrapped up in a beautiful and visually impressive package, which looks spectacular even if it is running on a high-end PC or the Xbox One X. This game looks like one of those games I could happily lose tens or even hundreds of hours in and still want more. Expectations are high for this game, I just hope they can deliver and this doesn't become a Last Guardian and get pushed back for years, or an underwhelming experience like No Man's Sky. So, that was my personal favourite announcements from E3 and games going into 2017/2018 and beyond. Please feel free to discuss or list your favourite announcements from E3 or games you're most hyped for in the next couple of years in the comments below. Anywho, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe for more BS of a similar nature. Thank you and goodbye.